You don't deserve help, Claire. Your sister is responsible, successful, doesn't need anyone holding her hand. Unlike you. The words came from my father's mouth like acid. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. His tone was calm, final, the way a judge delivers a sentence. I stood there in his kitchen, clutching the unpaid hospital bill in my hand, the one with my name stamped across the top like a scarlet letter. My mother stayed quiet, eyes fixed on the floor. My sister, Emily, leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching me with a smug little smirk that said everything my father didn't. My name is Claire Monroe. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been treated like a stranger in your own family? That night, it was as if the walls themselves whispered it back to me. Yes. I had come to them desperate. My job had cut. My hours, and medical bills from a surgery I hadn't asked for were stacking higher than I could breathe through. I thought my family would be a net. Instead, they were a blade. I'm not asking for a handout, I said, my voice trembling. My fingers clutching the bill so hard it crumpled. It's a loan. I'll pay you back. My father shook his head. Emily doesn't need help. She's built her life. She's stable. You've always been reckless, Claire. You make your bed, you lie in it. My chest tightened. Reckless? I had worked 2 jobs through college while Emily got her tuition fully paid. I had given up dreams so my family could stay afloat when Mom got sick. I was the one who stayed when Emily moved states away chasing promotions. And yet, here I was, standing in front of the man who raised me, being told I was the failure. Emily's voice cut through the silence. Sweet, but laced with venom. Don't take it personally, Claire. Not everyone is meant to succeed. The kitchen light buzzed above us, flickering once, like even the house was embarrassed for me. My palms burned with humiliation. But beneath the humiliation, something colder stirred, not anger. Not yet, resolved. I slipped the bill back into my bag, turned without another word, and walked out. The air outside was freezing, but inside me a fire had started. They thought they knew me. They thought I'd crumble, but the thing about betrayal is this: it carves you open, and what bleeds out first is weakness. What remains is something they'll never see coming. The night I left my father's house, the sky felt heavier than I'd ever seen it. Clouds swallowed the moon, the streets were empty, and the only sound was the broken rhythm of my boots against the sidewalk. I kept hearing his voice in my head, over and over again. Unlike you. Unlike you. That phrase became a hook, dragging through my chest with every breath. I got back to my apartment, if you could even call it that. For walls the color of stale bread, a ceiling stained by a leak no one ever fixed, and silence so loud it made your ears ring. I threw the bill onto the counter, collapsing into a chair with its cushion torn at the seams. I stared at that piece of paper like it was alive. $6,842.26. I didn't have it. Not even close. My bank account barely had enough to cover groceries. And my hours at the diner had been cut again. I felt like I was shrinking into myself. My father's words had reduced me from a daughter to a liability, from flesh and blood to a burden, and then came the thought, sharp, dangerous, but impossible to ignore: if no one's going to save me, then I have to save myself. But saving myself wasn't going to look like begging for extra shifts or pawning my mother's necklace. No. Something inside me had shifted when I saw Emily smirk, when I heard my father spit those words out as if I were nothing. I wasn't going to survive by being good. I was going to survive by being unforgettable. The next morning, I dragged myself out of bed and into the diner. The smell of grease and burnt coffee hit me like a wall. My manager, Tom, barked at me before I even tied my apron. Claire, you're late. Again. Customers don't wait for sob stories. He didn't know. Nobody did. That was the part that ate at me. I was drowning in silence, and everyone around me was sipping lattes on the shore. I plastered on a smile. And took orders, writing down bacon and eggs while my hands shook. And then she walked in. Emily. My sister. Perfect hair, perfect nails, designer coat that probably cost more than my rent. She slid into a booth like she owned the place, like her presence was a gift. When her eyes met mine, she smiled, a smile meant for predators, not family. Coffee, Claire, she said, without even a hello. I poured it, the smell rich and bitter, steam curling between us like smoke from a gun. Dad told me you came by last night, she said casually, stirring sugar into the cup. Claire, you really should get it together. It's embarrassing, you know? For the family. Always needing something. Embarrassing. That word clung to me like tar. I leaned closer, my voice low enough that no one else could hear. One day, Emily, you're going to choke on all that smugness. Her spoon froze mid-stir. Her eyes flickered with something, fear, maybe, or just the sting of being challenged. Then she laughed. Loud, careless, the kind of laugh that told me she wasn't taking me seriously, but she should have, because in that moment, watching her sip from the chipped diner mug like she was above it all. Something crystallized inside me. My father's betrayal, Emily's mockery, Tom's indifference, it all fused into a single truth. I was done being the family failure. Done being the afterthought. If Emily was the shining star, the responsible one, the success story, then I was going to become her eclipse. That night, back in my apartment, I sat at my desk with a notebook. I started writing down everything I knew about Emily. Her routines, her habits, her weaknesses. The way she bragged about her promotion at the law firm. The clients she name-dropped. The men she dated and discarded like shoes. I wrote until my hand cramped, until the lines blurred, until the notebook was heavy with secrets, because if they wouldn't help me stand, then I'd bring them to their knees, and somewhere deep inside, I whispered to myself, a promise sharp as glass, they will regret underestimating me. The next morning, I parked my car across the street from Emily's apartment. A small, sunlit building, the kind where everyone knows your name, your neighbors' birthdays, and how many plants you kill in a year. Perfectly mundane. Perfectly hers. I sat there for a long time, sipping lukewarm coffee, pretending I was a passerby, a stranger observing her life. I didn't just see Emily, I catalogued her. Every movement, every nuance. How she laughed at the barista, the way she rubbed her temple when she read emails, the meticulous organization of her desk near the window. It wasn't enough to hate her. I needed leverage. I needed the tools to dismantle the pedestal she'd built on my failures. That afternoon, I borrowed my laptop and dug into public records, her professional history, everything I could scrape from social media. Awards, promotions, glossy headshots. But I noticed cracks where her picture-perfect persona faltered. A complaint here, a missed deadline there. Nothing huge. Nothing obvious to anyone but me. I smiled, because that was all I needed. A spark. I started small. A friend from college remembered her bragging about an internship she'd allegedly gotten through merit. A quick call, a casual question, and I discovered it wasn't entirely true. Not a lie exactly, more of a carefully polished omission. But enough to plant the seed, and the more I looked, the more I found. Emily wasn't flawless. She wasn't untouchable. She was just human. And human had cracks. At work, I began to notice patterns in my own life that mirrored hers, the way Dad praised her and dismissed me, the way Mom looked away when she knew I was struggling. I let it fuel me, let it harden into something sharp. I realized that revenge wouldn't be about destruction. It would be about illumination, showing them everything they ignored, everything they overlooked. By the third week, I was obsessed. I left diner shifts with my mind racing, scouring forums, old classmates' pages, even niche law blogs for mentions of her name. Every nugget of information was a stone I could use to build a path, a trap, a future where Emily's perfect image was no longer untouchable. But obsession has a cost. Sleep became a memory, meals a necessity I barely acknowledged, my apartment littered with printouts, sticky notes, and photographs, a map of her life, a blueprint for dismantling the lie she'd built, and still, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. My father's words, his condescending dismissal, the echo of "unlike you," had broken something, yes. But from that fracture, a new self emerged. One who could wait. One who could plan. One who could strike without mercy. One evening, Emily texted me, oblivious to the storm I was brewing, "Claire, want to catch up? Coffee tomorrow? Don't worry, I'm buying." I stared at the message, fingers hovering above the keyboard. Did I accept? Did I confront her, plant the first seed of chaos? Or did I play the patient game, letting her assume all was normal, letting her bask in the illusion of control? Patience 1. I typed back, "Sure. 10 a.m. Your usual place." I smiled. Not the smile of a sister meeting a sibling, but the smile of a predator circling a cage she doesn't know she's in. That night, I spread out all my notes and photos across the floor, tracing connections, planning the next moves, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel weak. I felt inevitable. The betrayal of my family had planted a seed. And now, every action I took, every step I planned, was water, sunlight, and soil. By the time I finally drifted into a restless sleep, I knew one thing: Emily's perfection was a lie. And I was about to make everyone see it, even Dad, even Mom, even her. The world had always told me I was less. That I was reckless, incapable, undeserving. And now, I was proof that the reckoning could come quietly, invisibly, and devastate them all. And in that silence, I whispered into the dark, "I am coming for my place. And no one will forget it." The morning of our coffee date, I woke before dawn. My apartment was dark except for the glow of my laptop, where I'd mapped out Emily's week, meetings, gym schedule, lunch with coworkers, client calls. Every tiny detail she took for granted, I had catalogued like a soldier preparing for battle. I dressed in muted colors, the kind that made me invisible but allowed me to watch, observe, strike without warning. By the time I arrived at the cafe, Emily was already there, radiant, self-assured, sipping a latte as if the world had nothing but kindness for her. "Claire," she chirped, standing, hugging me lightly. "It's been too long." I returned the hug with measured warmth, my fingers brushing hers, letting her sense nothing of the storm I carried. "Yeah. Too long," I said softly, letting a small, almost imperceptible tension hang in the air. We sat, ordered, and made small talk. She babbled about her promotion, about new clients, about the conference she'd be speaking at next month. Every word was another brick in the perfect persona she had built, and every brick I catalogued mentally, a notch in my plan. I smiled politely, nodded, sipped my coffee, and waited. Then I asked, "Emily, remember that internship you had? The one at Langford and Pierce?" She froze, eyes narrowing. "Yes, why?" "Oh, no reason," I said lightly, tilting my cup. "Just curious how you managed to, get that role. It must have been competitive." Her smile flickered, a shadow crossing her features. What do you mean?" I leaned in subtly, lowering my voice. I heard it wasn't exactly merit-based. Someone whispered that you might have had help." She laughed nervously, a tight, brittle sound. "Claire, that's ridiculous." "Is it?" I asked, my eyes scanning the cafe. I let my tone drip with an almost invisible accusation. "I just thought it was interesting how some people succeed effortlessly while others struggle just to breathe." Emily's hands shook slightly around her cup. The perfect mask cracked. Not shattered, but cracked, and I felt the first surge of satisfaction. But this was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, I became a shadow in her life. Friend requests under pseudonyms, subtle questions to her colleagues, anonymous tips to her social media followers. Small, almost invisible nudges that made people question what they thought they knew about her. I watched her flinch at emails she didn't recognize, lose sleep over posts she didn't make, double-check conversations she thought were private. And all the while, I stayed careful. I stayed invisible. Untouchable. At home, I confronted my father indirectly, making casual mentions of her slip-ups at family dinners, planting doubt. He never questioned me directly, but I could see it in his eyes. The seed of disbelief. The tiny cracks in his pedestal for Emily. Mom, meanwhile, lingered in silence, no longer hiding behind neutral expressions. I could see her confusion, her subtle acknowledgement that maybe she had favored the wrong daughter. That maybe she had ignored the one who could fight back. One evening, Emily called me. Her voice was a whisper. "Claire, did you hear from anyone? Someone's been talking." I smiled, hiding behind a polite laugh. "I don't know what you mean." But I did know. Every whispered doubt, every glance of suspicion, every fleeting insecurity, it was my doing. I had planted it like seeds. In winter, waiting for the spring when everything would bloom into chaos, that night, I sat in my apartment, notebooks spread across the floor, a map of her life laid bare before me. Her secrets, her habits, her carefully curated image, all vulnerable, all exposed to the quiet storm I had created. I poured myself a glass of wine, letting it burn down my throat, and whispered to the empty room, "They think I'm less. They think I can't fight. But they don't know, they've only started the story." And for the first time, I felt truly alive. Not because of vengeance, but because of power, the betrayal of my father, the mockery of my sister, the silence of my mother. They had given me a gift. A single, sharp truth. I was not the failure. I was the reckoning, and Emily was just the first act. By the time June rolled around, Emily's world was unraveling in ways she couldn't yet understand. I had learned to play the long game. Patience was my weapon, invisibility my armor. Every rumor, every slip I'd planted, now began to bloom. Her colleagues whispered behind her back. Clients questioned her judgment. Friends doubted her stories. All of it traced back to me, a ghost in the corners of her life, and still, she had no idea. I watched her from across the street one Friday evening as she left her office building. The city lights shimmered off her coat, the same expensive one she wore weeks ago at the diner. When she looked down her nose at me, she held her phone like a shield, scrolling nervously. I knew she'd just received a message from a coworker, one of the subtle nudges I'd sent. A tiny, seemingly innocent text suggesting she might have exaggerated her role on a recent project. Enough to see doubt. I smiled, but it was quiet, almost imperceptible. Satisfaction burned behind my ribs like fire. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't childish. I was inevitable. Back at my apartment, I spread her recent emails across my kitchen table. Each contained a hint of tension, a shadow of uncertainty. Each read like the first cracks in a glass ceiling. Then came the call I'd been waiting for. "Dad, Claire. I think you should know. Emily, she's been stressed. People at work are talking. Is this your doing?" I pressed. The phone between my ear and shoulder, my pulse steady, my voice calm, deliberate. Dad. I don't know what you mean. He sighed, heavy with worry. I don't know either. But something's happening. I've never seen her like this. Perfect. The next day, I escalated further. I sent an anonymous tip to the local paper about a minor mismanagement at her firm, something blown out of proportion through clever wording. I watched from my laptop as the newsroom picked it up. Within hours, Emily's inbox flooded with questions. Clients called. Her boss asked for clarifications. Social media quietly murmured about the rising star with cracks. And then I received the first text from Emily herself, trembling on the other side of the line. Claire, please? I don't understand what's happening. I've done everything right. Why me? I didn't respond immediately. I let the silence stretch. Let her desperation settle into her chest. Let her feel the first pangs of fear, the realization that control was slipping. Finally, I typed back, simple and precise. You've always had it easy, Emily. The world bent for you. Now, it's my turn to stand. By July, the pressure on her was palpable. Her once perfect schedule fractured. She canceled meetings, called in sick, and double-checked every interaction like a paranoid child. Friends noticed, coworkers whispered. And Dad began to look at her differently. Not with pride, but with concern. Mom called me one evening, hesitating at first. Claire, I don't know how you're doing this, but I'm seeing her, she's struggling. And I think maybe you were always stronger than I thought. That was all I needed. Validation didn't come from revenge itself, it came from their acknowledgement that they had underestimated me, that they had ignored the daughter they deemed unworthy. I poured another glass of wine, staring out my apartment window at the city lights, thinking about how carefully I'd orchestrated this storm. And then I smiled, because I knew the final act was coming. Emily would break. Not completely, not irreparably, but enough that she would remember. Enough that she would understand the pain of being underestimated, overlooked, betrayed by blood and my father. He would finally see, the reckoning was near, and the echoes of my patience, my planning, my quiet fury would reach every corner of the lives that had tried to crush me. I set down my glass, eyes narrowing. This was more than revenge now. It was poetry, and every step, every calculated move, was a line in the verse. A verse I would recite until the end, until everyone remembered that I wasn't weak. That I wasn't reckless. That the daughter they discarded had risen, and in that quiet, predatory silence, I whispered to the empty apartment, soon, it will all be done. And they'll know who I am. Emily didn't see me coming. She thought the chaos was random, chance, coincidence, maybe even bad luck. But I was always there. Quiet. Watching. Waiting. Every mistake she made, every faltering step, every doubt that pricked her confidence, I had orchestrated it. The day I decided to strike directly, I called her, my voice soft and measured. Emily, can we talk? Alone? She hesitated. I could hear the tension in her breath, the way she shifted on the other end of the line. Okay. I'll meet you at the park near our old high school. Noon. Perfect. I arrived early, sitting on the worn bench under the oak tree where we'd played as children, the one that had once been a sanctuary. I watched her approach, hair glinting in the sun, face tight with apprehension. She tried to smile, but it faltered when she saw me. Claire. She began, voice trembling. I don't understand. Everything is falling apart. People are saying things, and I raised a hand, silencing her without a word. My gaze never left hers, calm, unflinching, like steel forged. In fire. You always had it easy, Emily, I said finally, letting each word land slowly, deliberately. You were perfect. Dad told me, your sister doesn't need help. And everyone else just nodded. You didn't struggle. You didn't fight. You didn't have to survive. Her eyes darted away, then back, lips pressed thin. Claire, what are you saying? I leaned closer, lowering my voice until it was almost a whisper, the kind that carries weight in silence. I'm saying, I did everything you were supposed to do. I worked harder, I sacrificed more, and for years, they told me I was nothing. Not worthy. Reckless. A failure. Her hands trembled around the strap of her purse. Claire, I never meant. I cut her off. It's not about what you meant. It's about what they made me feel. And now, Emily, it's your turn to feel it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell. I just let the truth, the weight of years of betrayal, settle between us. Her perfect armor cracked, and I saw it, the panic, the fear, the realization that control was slipping. Over the next hour, I didn't even need to elaborate. She could feel it. Every subtle manipulation, every rumor, every whisper I'd sent into the world was hers now. Her career faltering, colleagues questioning her, friends doubting her loyalty. And Dad, he had begun to see. You've been behind this? she whispered finally, voice breaking. All of it? I nodded once, almost imperceptibly. Yes. And it's not just revenge, Emily. It's truth. A mirror. You were raised to shine, and I was raised to stumble. Now, we're even. But more than that? I'm standing. She fell silent, tears threatening, but there was no pleading left, only comprehension. And in that moment, I realized something crucial. The real power wasn't in ruining her, it was in making them see me, the daughter they'd underestimated, dismissed, ignored. Later, I called Dad. Dad, do you remember what you said? How Emily doesn't need help. How I was reckless. He was silent for a long time. Then, his voice cracked, raw, almost afraid. Claire, I didn't see. I was blind. I let him trail off, swallowed by his own guilt. I didn't need his apology. Not now. Not ever. I just needed acknowledgement. Mom, too, finally called. Her voice soft, tentative. Claire, I think I've been unfair. I see you differently now. I didn't interrupt. I let her say it all. The reckoning wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about recognition. The daughter they dismissed, the sister they favored, the girl they thought was reckless, had grown into someone they could not ignore. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, the city lights flickering outside the window. Emily's world was fragile now, her confidence shaken, but intact enough that she could rebuild. And Dad and Mom, they would never speak to me the same way again. I realized then that the ultimate victory wasn't destruction. It wasn't humiliation. It was balance. I poured myself a glass of wine, letting it warm my chest. I thought about the journey. The betrayal, the planning, the meticulous, patient orchestration of every small move. Every insult, every dismissal, every whispered comparison had led to this acknowledgement, and as I stared into the glass, I whispered to myself, almost reverently, I've won, not because I crushed them, but because they finally see me. The weight of years lifted, replaced with a calm, fierce satisfaction. The story of Claire Monroe, dismissed daughter, overlooked sister, was finally told. And everyone had to listen. I closed my notebook, the pages full of notes, plans, and strategies, remnants of a war that had transformed into closure, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to breathe, because the reckoning was complete, and soon. The final act would write itself. The day I walked into my father's house, everything had changed. Not the walls, not the furniture, but the air itself felt different, charged with anticipation. I didn't knock. I didn't announce myself. I just entered, letting my presence fill the spaces where my silence had once been ignored. Dad was in his study, papers scattered across his desk, a half-empty coffee cup trembling in his hand. He looked up when he heard me, his eyes widening. For once, there was no judgment in his face. Only recognition. Claire, he began, voice small, uncertain. I held up a hand, stopping him. I'm not here for excuses. I'm here so you finally see me. All of me. Not just the failures you compared to Emily. He swallowed. I could see the weight of guilt pressing down on him like an invisible fist. He'd lived all these years praising the golden child while dismissing me, thinking I was reckless, undeserving. Now he saw the fire in my eyes, the quiet power of a daughter who had survived betrayal and grown stronger because of it. Mom appeared from the hallway, hesitant, but finally standing behind Dad. Her eyes were wide, almost fearful. I didn't soften for her. I didn't apologize. I simply let them feel the gravity of my presence. Emily arrived moments later, unannounced, drawn by a vague message I'd sent, meet me where we started. Noon. She stepped into the room, shoulders stiff, lips pressed tight, trying to maintain control but failing. The cracks in her perfect veneer were undeniable now. I smiled faintly. Emily. Sit. She obeyed, wary. I could see the questions spinning behind her eyes. She wanted to argue, to deny, to plead, but I didn't give her words. I gave her the mirror. Do you remember? I began, voice steady, deliberate. The way Dad told me you were perfect? That you didn't need help? That I was reckless? Her lips parted, but no words came. I've spent months proving something, I continued, letting each sentence settle slowly like heavy stones. Not just to you, not just to Dad and Mom, but to myself. That the daughter you dismissed could rise. That the sister you envied could stand unshaken. That the girl labeled reckless could become unstoppable. Emily's hands fidgeted. In her lap. I could see her thoughts scrambling, reconstructing the weeks of subtle chaos I'd sown, the whispers at work, the anonymous tips, the doubts planted in the minds of everyone she trusted. She realized, finally, that this was no coincidence. This was me. I didn't break you, I said, voice softer now, almost gentle. I just helped you see the truth. That perfection is fragile. That the world can't carry you alone. And that underestimating someone is a dangerous mistake. Dad's shoulders sagged. Mom's hand hovered near her mouth, a silent apology forming. The years of favoritism, of dismissal, of blind judgment, all hung heavy in the room. Emily finally whispered, her voice trembling, "Claire? I didn't know. I shook my head slightly. You didn't know because I didn't need your acknowledgement. I needed your family to see me. And now, you do." For the first time, the room was still. The tension didn't vanish, but it shifted. Respect replaced disdain. Recognition replaced dismissal. My family had been forced to confront the truth. The daughter they had written off had grown into someone they could not ignore, someone they would never mistake for weak again. I didn't gloat. I didn't scream. I simply stood there, letting the weight of my journey settle in the air like dust after a storm. The storm had passed. The reckoning was done. Emily's eyes filled with tears, not just for fear, but for understanding. Dad's face was pale, humbled. Mom's lips quivered as she murmured, "Claire, I see you." And in that acknowledgement, I felt it, closure. Not revenge in its cruelest sense, but justice. Not destruction, but balance. Not pain, but power reclaimed. I turned slowly, feeling the calm of inevitability wash over me. The storm I had carried for years, nurtured, and unleashed, had finally fulfilled its purpose. The echoes of betrayal, envy, and dismissal now faded into quiet reverence, and as I stepped toward the door, leaving my family to digest the truth, I whispered to myself. The single word resonating like a bell of finality,